Greetings, fair listeners, and thank you for joining me once again as we celebrate stories and storytelling in all their forms and the bards and artists who bring them all to life. I am the Tale Collector and your host, Erica Adams. On my 8th Christmas morning, my little sister and I each received from our mother a VHS movie featuring a single TV episode of two very different cartoons. For her, The Berenstain Bears and The Messy Room, and for me, 25 of the most terrifying minutes I had ever seen in fiction up to then. Like Poltergeist Exorcist Ring kind of terrifying. Of course, the effects have long since been dulled, but here's the real kicker. Later on as an adult, I looked up the cartoon on Wikipedia just for fun and found the listing of the infamous episode in question, entitled The Invisible Monster. This is how its description ends. Quote, "Note, this episode is generally remembered as the most frightening one in the series." End quote. I swear, I had not laughed so loud and so hard in a long, long time. Presenting Jonny Quest, first airing from 1964 to 1965, with two sequel series, The New Adventures of Jonny Quest from 1986 to 1987, and The Real Adventures of Jonny Quest from 1996 to 1997, and recommended for viewers 12 and up. On the surface, Jonny Quest is your typical American kid, but his life is far from typical. His father is Dr. Benton Quest, a brilliant scientist whose life's mission, besides caring for his only son, is to use his research for world peace. But Jonny is in constant danger from enemies who would use him to compromise or exploit Dr. Quest's work. Luckily, they are not alone. With them is Race Bannon, the Quest's strong and steadfast bodyguard, Haji Singh, Johnny's adopted Indian brother and closest companion, Race's equally adventurous and intellectual daughter, Jessie, and the Quest's playful but fierce dog, Bandit. Together, the team travels the globe, seeking priceless artifacts, creating experimental devices, and studying mysterious phenomena, protecting them and each other from any who desire world domination and destruction. Not unlike Walt Disney's Gargoyles in the mid-1990s, the franchise's first series, Jonny Quest, was animation juggernaut Hanna-Barbera's first foray into the action-adventure genre, after the studio had established itself with comedic cartoons like the Flintstones, Yogi Bear, and the Jetsons. When comic book artist Doug Wildey was hired to design an animated TV adaptation of the 1930s radio drama Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy, Hanna-Barbera couldn't obtain the rights, so Wildey borrowed its core elements to create an original story. But Jack still has a small place in the Quest legacy. In the opening shots of Jonny Quest's end credit sequence, the two figures escaping the African warriors via hovercraft are actually Jack Armstrong and his friend Billy Fairfield. Not only would Jonny Quest pave the way for more action fare from Hanna-Barbera, like Space Ghost, The Herculoids, and Birdman, it would inspire many parodies and crossovers, the best known of the former being the Adult Swim series, The Venture Brothers. I was too young to remember watching much of the 60s series other than my VHS tape, but I think my later taste in older science fiction has helped me better understand and appreciate its presentation. Though it utilizes the same limited animation as the slapstick cartoons that came before it, I think it complements rather than cheapens the authentically detailed, thick-line action comic book design. Its episode titles and title cards resemble the beautiful handcrafted sci-fi movie posters of old, like The Mystery of the Lizard Men, The Dreadful Doll, and the aforementioned The Invisible Monster. And also like vintage sci-fi flicks, the episodes are a lot more fun than the generic names would have you believe. Racially insensitive though it may be by today's standards, with its often stereotypical depiction of foreign enemies and indigenous cultures, it's still a fascinating time capsule of the Cold War era, illustrating the values and consequences of scientific progress behind the riveting exploits of a kid's action cartoon. I knew nothing of New Adventures as a kid, but having watched it now, it neither emulated the original enough to feel nostalgic, nor updated it enough to make it unique. The Real Adventure series is the one I'm most familiar with, as I watched it on Cartoon Network's Toonami block. This revival brought its protagonist to his teen years and its franchise into the newly evolving internet age. One nice subtle touch is its use of OCRA, an electronic font developed in 1968 to be recognized by both early computers and humans. More prominent is the addition of 3D animation via QuestWorld, a computer program which allows the heroes to enter cyberspace as virtual avatars. The unrefined CGI is nowhere near Code Lyoko or even reboot quality due to time and budget, but that's made up for with modernized threats like cyber-terrorism, nuclear warfare, and even paranormal activity to raise the stakes, making this show as much an upgrade as an update. These and other features make comparing and contrasting the original and revival an interesting exercise in story critique and analysis. Whereas the former's futuristic espionage look and tone remain consistent, the latter's troubled production history and many staffing changes during its run resulted in its 2 seasons looking and feeling as different from each other as they both do from their 60s counterpart. Real Adventure Season 1 revamped the characters with more believable qualities and wrote more plausible plotlines based on documented phenomena like ancient history or cryptozoology, such as the Jersey Devil and the Revolutionary War in The Spectre of Pine Barrens. Season 2, on the other hand, brought the characters back to their 60s roots, while, rather ironically, delving into more supernatural territory, aliens, demons, ghosts, etc., like in another episode I personally found very chilling, The Mummies of Malinke. While not objectively bad, this can make for a somewhat jarring viewing experience. Thankfully, the main character stayed the same where it matters most. Jonny is as bold as his name with a spirit to match. He has a boundless curiosity, competitive spirit, and mischievous streak, playing harmless pranks on his family and not so harmless ones on the villains, but he never comes off as annoying or obnoxious. While not as scientific as his father, preferring to be in the thick of the action and using his keen intuition to stay out of trouble, Jonny cares for him deeply, along with any good soul he comes across, human or otherwise. Dr. Quest has a very kingly demeanor, dignified and firm, but benevolent and patient. He is never focused on his work to the point of obsession or negligence, nor does his thirst for knowledge close his mind to myth and legend in favor of facts, or motivate him to exploit them for personal gain. He may be a top U.S. government scientist, but he is first and foremost a loving parent and a good man, the lives of others worth more to him than all the wisdom on the planet. Race, a former special agent, protects the Quest team and especially Jonny, quote, 24 hours a day as tutor, companion, and all-around watchdog, end quote. Race underwent the most striking alterations out of the cast from one show and season to the next, compared to his near-identical depictions in the original and Real Adventure Season 2. In Season 1, he looks younger and lankier, with an almost distracting southern accent and a patent for witty, if corny, cowboy quips. He is well-versed in judo and various kinds of weapons and vehicles. While he performs his duty with the utmost seriousness, he is treated by his charges less like an employee and more like a member of their family, acting as Dr. Quest's most trusted confidant and a father figure to the kids, with level-headedness, some dry humor, and grit. Hachi joins the team after saving Dr. Quest from an assassin's dagger. His introspective mysticism balances out the story's otherwise strict science, and he serves as the voice of reason to his age-mate's impulsiveness, often speaking in proverbs and riddles, many of which go over their heads. Depending on version, he is proficient in tricks like snake charming, levitation, and telekinesis, or in actual yogi abilities like slowing his breathing to simulate death. His devotion to his own faith and culture is matched only by his love for his American family. Jessie was a late but invaluable addition to the franchise. The first version of her, with a different backstory, appeared in the New Adventures episode Deadly Junket, but rarely again until after she became a permanent fixture in Real Adventures. But she is no mere token female. Though the most academic of the young trio, she has a deep and earnest reverence for the world's splendor that goes beyond mere study. She also shares the boys' love of exploration and courage to face impossible odds for the sake of what's right. The Quest bulldog, Bandit, is so named due to the black mask-like markings around his eyes. Unlike most of Hanna-Barbera's animal characters, Bandit is a natural, non-anthropomorphic dog. That said, in the first show he is the comic relief, showing human expressions and intelligence, and his curiosity, even greater than Jonny's, often getting him into adorable mishaps. These cartoonish features were toned down in the revival to make him even more realistic. Nevertheless, he saves his human friends countless times, as any brave and loyal dog does. Regardless of the show or decade, I can imagine many a kid and adult finding the protagonist's likability, relatability, and overall confidence and inner strength just as appealing as the adrenaline-fueled adventures and exotic locales he and his comrades encounter. Whether you like a good old-fashioned sci-fi B-movie or a modern technological thriller, Jonny Quest wraps up all the size and scope of both in a nice, neat little after-school package. Gather round next time for another tale you may have forgotten or have never heard before. Until then, listeners, may inspiration always find you.